Okay, so what if I told you there's a tidying method out there that's so powerful it doesn't just clean your house, it can actually change your entire life? I know, it sounds dramatic, but today we're diving into the global phenomenon that promises to do exactly that.
And it all started with this book right here, Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. She basically introduced this radical new way of looking at all our stuff, and believe me, it's about way more than just decluttered.
You know, this quote really gets to the absolute heart of her philosophy. See, the KonMari method isn't really about what you get rid of. As one user online put it so perfectly, it's about the positive, intentional action of choosing what you truly want to keep in your life. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get into the core idea of sparking joy. Then, we'll walk through the official, by-the-book rules. After that, we'll see what happens when those rules meet our messy, real lives, explore how people have cleverly adapted the method, and finally, discover why this is about so much more than a tidy home.
Right, so what is this spark joy thing all about anyway? Before we even think about folding a single t-shirt, we have to get the mindset down, because this whole method is actually inspired by a pretty deep spiritual tradition.
So the method has roots in Shintoism, which has this belief in kami, these sacred essences that can exist in everything. That's why Kondo's approach involves treating your things with respect, thanking them for their service. It's about acknowledging the role they played in your life.
And this is really interesting. The original Japanese word is tokimeku. We translate it as spark joy, but it's not a logical question like, is this useful? It's a physical feeling. When you hold an object, do you feel a little thrill, a little flutter? That feeling, that's the only metric you're supposed to use.
Okay, so let's get into the official method itself. Kondo lays out this very specific, kind of non-negotiable process that she calls a tidying festival. It's an event. You have to go through your stuff in these 5 categories, and in this exact order. And there's a really clever reason for this. You start with clothes, which are usually the least emotional category, and you basically build up your decision-making muscle. You save the really tough stuff, sentimental items, for the very end, once your spark joy radar is totally dialed in. And here are the ground rules. You don't just clean your bedroom. No, you tackle all your clothes, from every closet, every drawer, every box, all at once. You pile them on the floor to physically confront the sheer volume of what you own. You have to finish one category completely before you even think about the next. And yeah, you thank each item for its service before letting it go.
Okay, so that's the theory. That's the ideal. But what happens when actual people try to do this in their actual homes? We went digging through some forums to find out about the messy middle, where the perfect method meets the real world.
One of the first things people run into is this pressure to have a perfect vision. Kondo tells you to imagine your ideal life before you start, but for a lot of people, that's just paralyzing. The general feeling online seems to be, it's okay. Let that vision evolve as you go. The most important thing is just to get started. And this really highlights a huge reality check. The tidying festival is not a one-weekend affair. I mean, look at this experience from one user, Flashy Cow 1, who said it took them a whole month just working on weekends. The process almost always takes way longer than you think, and that is totally 100% normal. And what about really complex collections? This question about magic cards is so relatable, right? For so many of us, a hobby isn't just one thing. It's thousands of little pieces, some valuable, some sentimental, and this is where the strict by-the-book rules can start to feel a little daunting.
Which brings us to probably the most common adaptation people make. That giant pile, it can be incredibly overwhelming, especially if you have a family or just not a lot of time. So people break it down. Instead of all clothes, they'll just do socks. Then they'll do t-shirts. You're still keeping the spirit of the rule, tackling one thing at a time, but you're making it manageable.
So this brings us to a really key insight from people who have successfully used this method for years. You can, and you probably should, adapt the rules to actually fit your life. It's meant to be a flexible process.
Take this for example. User X Danielle Elise makes a fantastic point for people with ADHD, pointing out that hobbies can be cyclical. Something that doesn't spark joy today might be your main passion in 6 months. So the adaptation isn't to purge an entire hobby, it's maybe to pare it down to just the essentials. And for parents, oh man, as Ria1024 hilariously points out, a giant pile of anything is basically an invitation for chaos when you have young kids. The adaptation there is to work in small, quick bursts, maybe when the kids are asleep or out of the house, and keep the mess totally contained.
Now, a huge point of confusion is always the useful stuff. Let's be real, a toilet plunger sparks zero joy. But as one user brilliantly explained, the joy comes from what it does for you. In this case, it gives you the peace of mind of a working toilet. You can absolutely appreciate an item for its function and keep it without feeling guilty.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, the core philosophical shift, focusing on what to keep, that's essential. That's a rule to stick with. But a super specific habit, like emptying your purse every single day, a lot of people find that totally impractical, and they just skip it. The goal is to make the system work for you, not the other way around.
And that brings us to the final, and honestly, the most profound part of this whole thing. There's a reason it's called the life-changing magic. I mean, just read this testimony from user Old Blue Vespa. It's incredibly powerful. The process of holding every single object you own and asking, does this spark joy, is practice. You are literally training yourself to recognize what you truly value. And that skill doesn't just stop with your stuff. It starts to extend to every part of your life.
And that's the real magic right there. The whole tidying festival is like a boot camp for your intuition. The ultimate goal isn't just a perfect, minimalist home. It's a life that's filled with intention, where you've consciously chosen what and who gets to be a part of it.
And that really just leaves us with one final question to think about. Once you've honed that skill on your clothes and your books, what else could you apply it to? Your commitments, your digital clutter, your relationships. What in your life truly sparks joy?